We'll include the questions at the end. All right, Steve, thank you very much. If you'd like to start your presentation.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, can you see that?
I can.
Okay, so what I wanted to do was talk about some of our highest priority butterflies in the southeast of England, and focus on these 12 that we can see here, all of which occur in the Upper Thames branch area. I want to talk about the kind of trends that we've been seeing over the last 20 years with these species, and especially what we've managed to achieve in the last 5 years. I'll try to move the slide on. There we go. So as Nick mentions, I cover the southeast of England, and we have an action plan for the southeast of England. And what I want to talk about is these 12 butterflies down the side, in light of the kind of regional declines, as I suppose, that we are often warned about, and show how the butterflies are doing here compared to the regional trends. Obviously, the main focus here is the Upper Thames branch and the 3 counties. So hopefully this is all relevant to the branch. If I get time, I want to speak about 2 species at the end of the presentation, which are not currently in the Upper Thames branch. So let's start with the wood white butterfly. As you can see, really restricted distribution for this species. The kind of Bucks Northants border is the key area for the branch, and the Sussex Surrey border further down south. So we've obviously had the Woodland Wings project up in the Northants Bucks border, which has done some fantastic work. And we're currently running a project on the Sussex Surrey border called Saving the Wood White in the southeast, to try and help the population there. We've collected and we've brought in kilos and kilos of seed, primarily of these 5 main food plants: Greater Birdsfoot trefoil, bitter vetch, Birdsfoot trefoil, tufted vetch, and meadow vetchling. And also we brought in seed of lots of the kind of nectar plants as well. So our current project is actually out sowing a lot of these seeds on the Sussex Surrey border. And this is the kind of thing that's been going on both in sort of Bucks Northants and on the Sussex Surrey border, clearing out ditches, scraping back, creating bare ground. If there's a really rich seed source here, we don't need to sow seed, but if it's an area where we've not seen these plants coming up before, we've been sowing that seed out. We've also been looking for the butterfly in other areas, or in other sites. We've been promoting people to go and look for the butterfly. We've been explaining to them, the differences between the wood white and the other white butterflies. This is St Mary's Church in Chiddingfold in Surrey, and the butterfly was found here flying quite happily and was seen mating as well, pairing up. So the managers of the churchyard here have actually written a new management plan specifically targeting the wood white butterfly. This was over a mile from any nearest known colony. So again, nice result here. We're also finding the butterfly in other places. So the 25-year trend here, what I've done is I've just shown the kind of trend line, and it's smoothed out so that obviously with each species there'll be peaks and troughs in each year depending on a variety of factors. But the overall trend here shows that historically there was a decline in the distribution of this butterfly, but we seem to be now turning this around. In the last 5 years, things are actually going upwards again, which is absolutely fantastic. brilliant result, and obviously a huge amount of work by by a lot of people, a lot of volunteers, conservation partners. Forestry England have done a fantastic job here. So it's early days, and obviously if we're just sowing the seed now, we're not going to see some of those changes for for quite a long time. It's probably 3 to 5 years before those plants become viable for the butterfly. But things are really starting to happen here, and that's a really positive sign for one of our most restricted butterflies. And we've got lots and lots of seed out there. We've got lots which we're still sharing. So I think that the future is looking pretty rosy for this species. I'm really pleased. It's one of my top 3 favourite butterflies. So I'm so relieved that in the last 5 years we seem to be really turning this one around. The marsh fritillary. Okay, so this is a strange one. The marsh fritillary hasn't really been present in our region in the last decade or so. It's found at Porton Down and then Salisbury Plain, so it just about edges in there, and Martin Down in the very southwest corner of the region. We've had colonies in Berkshire, we've had sightings in Oxfordshire, but it's not really been established colonies in the last few years. So this data takes us up to 2017. But then in the last few years, something strange has started to happen. So you can see a few more dots have appeared. Now the dot in northeast Hampshire is an official reintroduction at Foxleys, which was undertaken by Butterfly Conservation and by the Hampshire branch. Huge amount of work went into this over about 5 years, lots of planning, lots of working with Natural England, the MOD, the Wildlife Trust, to get that colony in there. But also in this 2-year period between 2017 and 2019, the butterflies appeared in other places. We know there's been an unofficial reintroduction in Berkshire, and we also found the butterfly on Butterfly Conservation's Magdalen Hill Down Reserve in central Hampshire. I'm pretty sure I know who's done this, but it was an unofficial release onto our own reserve. And you can see a few other dots have started to appear. Now, if we move this forward to another 2 years, up to 2019, we've got all these records. Now, we don't know which of these are genuine, which of these are unofficial releases. Our data here can't be used to produce a distribution trend, because we know some of this is unofficial, and we just don't know about the others. So our data is kind of corrupted by people doing things and not telling us. So a big message from me is, if people are going to do these kind of things, then please do speak to Butterfly Conservation about it. When you get kind of unofficial releases, sometimes into very poor habitat, what will happen is that the butterfly will just leave. It might hang around for a year or so, but it's going to think that it's not going to be happy where it is, and it's going to move on. So I suspect some of these records are of the butterfly just heading off, thinking, okay, I've been put here, I don't want to be here, I'm going to go and look for some better habitat. And so we're picking up more and more of these records. But it really does blur the picture, and Butterfly Conservation, being such a scientific based organization, gets very frustrated by this kind of activity. On now to our to 3 of the priority chalk grassland species, and the map here shows roughly where those chalk grasslands are within our region. So the Adonis blue, we've actually got 50% of the entire UK population in the southeast of England, and you can see there nice population in the Chilterns. It's also in West Berkshire, and a really nice distribution. But obviously you can see some gaps there which we'd love to fill. The silver spotted skipper, again, well distributed across the area, with some gaps, with some isolated colonies, but actually it's doing quite well. It's a species that likes warm temperatures, so things like climate change might be affecting the species, might be helping it to actually move. We've actually got 97% of the entire UK population in the southeast of England. And the lovely Duke of Burgundy butterfly, real specialist for us. You can see a really good colony in the Chilterns. There's a colony in Berkshire and all along the South Downs, plus that one isolated colony in Kent, which is actually doing really well. It's a very strong colony now. Over the last 10 years, that's really picked up. Some great work by our volunteers in Kent and by Natural England. And we've got 47% of the UK population here. So these are the trends for those three species. The Adonis blue is doing really well. It's increased its distribution in the last 20 years. Silver spotted skipper is increasing its distribution and increasing it further. A lot of those gains are on the South Downs. On the North Downs and on the Chilterns, it's actually not doing so well. So those are areas where we might like to focus some action. But it does like a very short sward with lots of broken turf, lots of little rabbit scrapes to warm up. It's a butterfly that likes it likes really warm temperatures, 25 degrees C, those kind of ranges. So again, climate change could be helping it, but also things like the drop in rabbit population might be affecting it as well in a negative way. And the Duke of Burgundy, you can see it has increased in its distribution in the last few years, or in the last, say, 15 years. We had a project in Sussex and Hampshire called Dukes on the Edge, which increased its distribution. We've had a project in the Chilterns to do some work, but we've seen a little bit of a decline in the last few years, and I suspect that's kind of that's because of the work in those previous projects has really boosted things and increased recording. And actually in the last few years we haven't had that project on the South Downs. That finished about 10 years ago, so potentially there's a bit of a drop in recording, or we might have lost a few sites. Interestingly though, I looked at the data for the Upper Thames branch, and in the Upper Thames branch the distribution is still increasing. So it's very slightly increased by about 4 or 5% in the last 5 years. So the trend there is still positive in the Upper Thames branch. On now to these what I kind of call wider countryside specialists. So these are, these three all occur on chalk grassland, but they do occur in the wider countryside as well, and they're not so restricted to those areas. So the small blue, our smallest butterfly, you see it's very well distributed. Again, very well distributed along the chalk grassland areas, but further afield. It feeds on kidney vetch, and it will actually feed on kidney vetch wherever it can find it. So it loves quarries, bare grounds, verges. And we've been out planting a lot of kidney vetch. Here's volunteers out on the North Downs sowing. Michael, could you mute your microphone, please? This is on the North Downs. They're sowing kidney vetch into an area that was scraped out. So it's just bare ground, bare chalk, and the kidney vetch gets going there. And again, there's a long-running program of collecting the seed, sowing and sowing it out. And kidney vetch will just grow anywhere. Here's a rooftop in Dorking, absolute sea of kidney vetch. So anywhere you spot, it's worth putting some out. It's very easy to collect the seed. Just give the plant a shake into a paper bag, and you'll be collecting seed in no time. Grizzled skipper, again, very well distributed across our region. Feeds on wild strawberry, cinquefoil, agrimony, and likes nectar plants like bugle, really loves those. Likes a really short sward and really tight with a few broken areas, a few hot spots. Nice mossy areas, always good for it. And the dingy skipper, again, very similar to the grizzled skipper in that it's got a really nice kind of range of distribution. Feeds on bird's-foot trefoil, horseshoe vetch, and again likes plants like bugle to nectar on. And here you can see the trends for those. So our the picture for the small blue is looking really good. It's increasing, and that rate of increase is increasing, which is fantastic. Grizzled skipper is one that isn't faring so well, and this is one that I'm personally quite worried about. It's quite a difficult one to manage for, and we are seeing a slight dip there in the last 20 years. And conversely, the dingy skipper is actually doing really well. Again, I think more flower-rich areas are benefiting it. Things like more bird's-foot trefoil out there, more nectar plants. So unlike the grizzled skipper, that one's doing really, really well. On now to our hair streaks. Obviously, the Upper Thames branch is the key area in the UK where you can find all 5 species of hair streak, and I'm going to just concentrate on 2 of those in this talk. So the black hair streak is obviously the Upper Thames specialist, and exists along those sort of clay vales through Oxfordshire and Bucks. And you can see, what a strong sort of focus stronghold area this is for the butterfly. And this is a butterfly essentially occurs almost nowhere else in the UK. So this is the real speciality for the branch. A few years ago, down in Sussex at Ditchling Common, the butterfly appeared. Again, this is an unofficial reintroduction at site with lots and lots of blackthorn. I can see why someone thought it might be a suitable site for it, and that population is still there. It's been there for a number of years now. Seems to be doing quite well, but not really spreading. We don't know if that population is being topped up annually by the same people that released it. We don't have good scientific data on that population because the people that are doing these things aren't talking to us. And then more recently, within the last few years, a population has appeared at Epsom in southwest London. Now, again, there's high numbers of the butterfly here in this one site, and it seems to be spreading into neighbouring sites. But again, we don't know how many were released. We don't know if it's being topped up. We kind of know, we have a very good idea of who's doing this, but they're not speaking to anyone they're not speaking to the site managers, they're not speaking to us, they're not speaking to Natural England. So again, it's very difficult to know what's going on here. It seems to be completely the wrong landscape for this butterfly. Although the food plant is there, blackthorn is across the southeast, and the butterfly is more exacting than that. It's got more particular requirements. So again, this is one that's not a very helpful release, and potentially this is condemning those butterflies to to an unfulfilled life cycle eventually. This very worrying looking graph is actually not so worrying. This is the date that the first adult was seen over this 35-year period. As you can see, the date has got about 3 weeks earlier over this 35-year period. So again, things are changing with this butterfly, and maybe it can survive in those other landscapes now. Maybe something is different about it, but it's certainly emerging a lot earlier than it used to. And this kind of data here, this is from Stuart Hodges, and really shows the value of the incredible recording that's been done over a really long period of time in a really structured way. You know, this is absolutely fantastic data. This is showing us what's happening in our environment. It's showing us climate change and those effects, and other things that are, you know, are changing with this butterfly. And again, here is a map of where Stuart and the other Black Hare Streak volunteers have been out recording and looking for the butterfly. Again, over a really long period of time, and it's building up a huge amount of data, you know, really focusing on the area between Oxford and Milton Keynes. And on now to the brown hair streak butterfly. So what the photo I've included here is the egg, because that is the key thing, such a key element for recording this butterfly. And you can see it's really interesting distribution of this species. It doesn't seem to be kind of, it doesn't seem to follow the boundaries of particular areas, but it's certainly expanding. And that shift away from looking for the butterfly to looking for the egg has been a real key success story in monitoring this butterfly. If we go back 20 years, this was the recorded distribution of the brown hair streak, and this was largely people looking for the butterfly, recording the butterfly rather than the egg. Now we're actually going out and looking for the egg, doing that targeted recording that I think we're going to hear about later. We end up with a picture that looks like that. So again, you know, the good, repeatable, targeted recording is really important for these things, giving us a really good scientific understanding of what's happening. And this is the recorded distribution for the brown hair streak in the southeast for the last 25 years. And again, we're not saying that the brown hair streak has expanded by this amount in its population size, but the amount of recording that we're getting now, you know, is vastly greater and is giving us a much stronger picture of what the butterfly actual status is in our region and across the UK. And just going back to this this picture that takes us up to recent times, you might be able to see that the butterfly is just starting to edge into West Kent. And what we're finding there is that we've had targeted recording there for a number of years, and we know that we weren't finding the butterfly in certain areas on that boundary, and now we are finding it. So we've managed to calculate that the butterfly is spreading about 1 mile per year, spreading eastwards into Kent and recolonizing Kent. So 1 mile a year doesn't sound very impressive, but it's we can be very confident in that figure. And it's actually, you know, when you think about it, it is female butterflies flying 1 mile from where they emerged, finding suitable blackthorn, laying their eggs, and completing their life cycle. So it's not as impressive as something like the comma, which is spreading at 10 miles per year, but it's still, you know, it's still an impressive feat for these tiny butterflies. If it's spreading eastwards at that rate, perhaps it's spreading westwards at an even faster rate. And it'd be interesting to do some more studies on that. Certainly, we are seeing, you know, due to climate change and due to our changing environment, we are seeing species spread northwards and westwards at an increasingly fast rate. Well, now to one of my other favourite butterflies, the silver-studded blue. You can see strong colonies around the New Forest, the Thames Basin heaths, which edges into Berkshire, and the Weald Green Sands on the sort of Hampshire-Surrey border, and the one isolated colony in East Sussex, just up the road from me, which I'll come back to. So here's the 20-year trends for these different landscapes. The New Forest has seen a bit of a dip, and I suspect that's linked to the heavy grazing that's taking place there, perhaps a few other issues. But in the Thames Basin heaths and Weald Green Sands, it's really doing fantastically well in the last 5 years. It's you know, we're really seeing good numbers there, and there's a lot of volunteer work going on there, a lot of activity, with a lot of good heathland work by the National Trust, by the Wildlife Trusts, and others. So things are really looking positive there. And I know it only just creeps into Berkshire, but it's and into the branch area, but it's really doing very well. So we hope to see more in that area. in Ashdown Forest, that trend, although it's not on this graph, that trend is constantly downwards. So that's a very, very isolated colony that seems to be on the brink of being lost. So what we've been doing in Ashdown Forest this winter, this is a photo from yesterday, is we're out there scraping out areas that are completely dominated by bracken and grasses and resowing them with heather seed. I've done this in certain areas, and it does work. It works really, really well, and the butterfly is very, very good at finding these new areas and colonizing them. So where we're seeing these dips, we're targeting our conservation action in those areas. We'd like to say it's not the dog driving the digger there. There is actually a guy in the cab. And the final species, the other heathland species here, grayling, again, very similar distribution to the silver-studded blue on those same key heaths, also over near Greenham Common and the heaths on that side as well. You'll also see some isolated dots, one down near Beachy Head in Sussex, just 2 miles from here where I am, and around the Isle of Wight. This is the chalk race grayling. It is a separate race, and it used to be widespread across chalk grasslands, and it's disappeared now. It's only found in 3 key sites on chalk in the southeast. So these are the isolated colonies that we are focusing some targeted work on at the moment. The chalk race grayling is very slightly lighter than the heathland species as well. Again, this is one of the species that likes it really, really hot. This species likes it hotter than any other butterfly, actually. So again, climate change might actually be beneficial to this butterfly. So focusing just from a second on that very isolated dot in Sussex down near Beachy Head. This is me out with a mattock on the one hillside where the grayling is found in Sussex. What I'm doing here is I'm recreating rabbit scrapes. So you just dig out a clump of earth, create a little hotspot of bare chalk that the butterfly can use to warm up in. And we've seen the butterfly using these areas. And then we've been grazing the areas with Exmoor ponies. They're feeding on the tall grass, which is invading this one slope, and they'll completely hammer the tall grass, break it up, allow more bare ground, much sparser vegetation. And again, we are seeing that the colony there is at least stable and is maybe picking up. And the Sussex branch has recently funded some fencing to actually enable the very next a slope in the next coombe across to now be grazed quite heavily and to try and recreate those same conditions. So I just wanted to talk about very briefly about two other species of interest. Oh, there's the grayling graph. So again, it's starting to pick up again, which is really good news. Heath fritillary. Now I realise you're not going to see this one in the Upper Thames branch, but I just wanted to talk about the kind of things that we're seeing changing. So the heath fritillary is in Blean Woods in north of Canterbury in East Kent. We've been managing to get record numbers of the heath fritillary in this area, the highest counts ever in the last few years. 2020 broke all records, 2021 broke that record. So the numbers there are really, really high. And what we've seen in the last few years with these very, very high numbers in the Blean woodlands is the butterfly sort of dispersing out of those woodlands. And we've been seeing it, it's been found in gardens in Canterbury, it's been found 5 kilometres away, 10 kilometres away from the known colony. Now, if you read Jeremy Thomas's book, he says this is a very sedentary butterfly, it rarely fly more than about 300 metres. This year, all of these are, this year we've seen it flying 3 kilometres, 5 kilometres, 10 kilometres. So it's, there's something really interesting happening with this butterfly. These are all verified by photos, and we've even seen it on its food plant, cow wheat, 5 kilometres from the known colony. So whether it can survive in that area, we're not sure. It's off of the London clay, and no other colony has been found off the London clay. So we don't, we're going to learn from this as we go along. But interesting things happen when you get these big numbers. The butterfly will disperse. And I suspect that's the females dispersing because they've mated, they're trying to lay eggs, and they're still getting bothered by males. So they're heading off and looking for new areas. Like the situation with marsh fritillary, potentially it's being put into unsuitable habitat, it's not happy, and it disperses as well. The other one I just wanted to mention, the very last one, the lace border moth, really pretty little moth, very, very distinctive, can be flushed by day from the grassland, and has been always found, it's found on the North Downs and two other sites in the UK, nowhere else. You can see some coastal records there, and we think that it does cross the channel and does occasionally migrate into the UK. But we've really upped the sort of recording for this species on the North Downs in the last 12 months. What's happened this year, in the last couple of years, we found two sites on the South Downs where this moth seems to have a colony. It's never been recorded on the South Downs before, or I think the county recorder said there's it averages two records per decade. This year we've seen, in the last couple of years, we've had over 100 records. So again, we suspect that this has migrated from the continent, has found suitable habitat on the South Downs in the national park. So it's a new species for the national park, and it's got established. So here's me on the South Downs, looking very, very happy. And there's the moth landed on my knee. So we just went out to have a look at the habitat, and the moth was coming to us. It seemed very happy there. So in conclusion, there's a few species that I'm a little bit worried about that are seeing a bit of a dip, things like the Duke of Burgundy and the grizzled skipper. We know the Duke of Burgundy is doing quite well in the Chilterns, and we put in a huge amount of work there. Nick and other volunteers have done a fantastic job there, planting out loads and loads of cowslip and primrose for it. Grizzled skipper, again, it's one I'm a little bit worried about. We're seeing a dip there, and it's quite a difficult one to manage for at scale. But we are seeing lots of really positive stories here in the data. Butterfly conservation's got better data on a taxa than any other organisation in the UK on a single taxa. So we can be very confident that there's some really positive stories coming out of this the work that we're doing. And of course, we're not doing it alone. When I say we, I'm talking about the kind of butterfly conservation family of volunteers, the branches, the other organisations that are all helping us do these kinds of things. These are all organisations here that are active and are helping in the Upper Thames branch area. So just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you to the volunteers that are out there doing the conservation work, doing the action, changing things in their own neighbourhood. All the volunteers that go out and actually do the recording, because that's what's providing us with this really good objective data, so we really do know what's happening. And thank you to the photographers, thank you to our partner organisations that are working with us. Back over to Nick.
Thank you very much, Steve. And we've kept pretty good to time there. I mean, that's good. I hope people can hear me. I just had the message to say that my internet connection is unstable, so I hope I don't go down. I'll very quickly say, are there any questions? Please unmute yourself if you have any questions for Steve. We'll just give this 5 minutes and then we'll move to our break.
Yes, please.
Yep, off you go, Kat.
I had a couple, if that's okay. The black hair streak, am I right in thinking there are some in Surrey? But
so it's it's ones that have appeared at Epsom in sort of southwest London, Surrey. Yes, it's the Surrey Vice County, BC17.
Do you think they are releases?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And the other thing was, why is the chalk grayling not doing as well as other chalk?
It's one that has just historically, over the last kind of 30-40 years, has just disappeared from the chalk.
You don't know why?
No, there's no kind of definitive reason. I mean, there's the sort of reduction in grazing and those kind of creation of those open areas that, you know, very, very bare chalk that gets really, really hot, that has probably reduced the temperatures of the sward and has affected it. But the fact that it's disappeared from almost every site is just really shocking, and so quickly that it's done that, you know, in the last 40-50 years. And it's the one slope that's on is the warmest slope in that landscape.
Right.
So we think it's certainly a temperature issue there.
Thank you. Very interesting talk too.
Thanks, Kat.
Can I ask a question, Steve?
Yeah, sure, Graham.
Well, two parts really. The grizzle skipper seems to run along the Chilterns, but not along the Berkshire Downs, where in the West Berkshire region it seems to skip to the gravelly bagshot beds. Is there a reason? Is it just poor management of the Downs that it doesn't continue down there?
I guess management is going to be an issue. I suspect that that you in the Upper Thames area will know more about the differences between those areas than I do, actually. I don't know if anyone does have an insight into that, whether Nick or someone has an insight into that.
It seems to be better on the gravels down in, you know, our part.
Yeah, it's certainly something we could and should look into now. Now we've identified that there is this kind of issue. The grizzle skipper should be a priority for butterfly conservation and and for our partner organisations. And we really should promote that and try and work out what's going on. Start testing some solutions to solve that.
And the other question was, with all these releases of the marsh artillery, are they all coming in with photos? Are we sure they are all marsh artilleries?
Can I come in here, Steve? I've verified all of the marsh artillery records on iRecord, which is where most of them have come in from, and the majority of them had photographs with them. And I myself have seen them at 6 different sites in the area. So, I mean, we are quite convinced these are genuine sightings. As Steve said, it's where they've come from that's the question, not the accuracy of the record.
Okay. And the final question, there is now one record of brown hair streak in the county, which I'd assumed was an introduction, but it's not very far from the big mass across the border, where it seems almost in every square. Is there a possibility that it's spreading rather than an introduction?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, we have seen, like I say, we are measuring it spreading, not just an increase in recording, but it does seem to be moving quite considerably from areas where we've never found it in the past to into areas. So yeah, I'd be quite positive about that. The complication is we know people are out there releasing things and not telling anyone, not telling us or telling other people. So it just kind of muddies the waters a bit in terms of what we know. But we can then monitor those populations and see if they look healthy, see if they're doing the right kind of things. So yeah, I'd be positive about that one. I think there's a very good chance it's natural.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'm aware that we are just a few minutes beyond the time we said we'd start the break. I'd like to thank Steve very much. That was very helpful. We're in chat to answer the question that was asked. Did Steve mean Berkshire when he put beds? Yes, you did, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
You might want to go back to one of your earlier slides and have a look. But we're very grateful. Thank you. And it's nice to see that we're such an important region for so many species, and that luckily the conservation work we're doing is paying dividends for most species. We're going to take our break now, people. So by all means, you can leave your computer running, or you could just log off for a bit and log back on. That should work. But we'll see you back here again just before 11:30, unless anyone wants to chip in with a last comment. Okay, we'll see you again at 11:30. Thank you.